Shabbos Seser El Yain B'Zel Shad Dayis Lenin Oimelet Neimachs Mitzadosi Alahai Eftav Hu Yatzilcho Mipach Yokush Midever Haves Bevese Yosach Loch Besachas Knof Terse Tzinu Zecher Amitei Leisid Mipachad Loilo Mechet Yoef Yemo Bidever Beifel Yalech Miketev Yoshu Soroyim Yipel Mitzitcha Elef Udavoch Miminecho Elecho Leyegosh Rak Minecho Sabit Mishlumas Risham Tire Katot Nemachsi Elyon Samte Meinecho Vesuna Lechero Benegli Ikrav Balecho Ki Malachov Yitzavoloch Lishmorcho Bechol Drochecho. These are very difficult moments where what we call, in the Hebrew terminology, it's called a levaya. A levaya means we escort somebody that's very precious to us, and as we say, farewell. Zivan means a lot to many of us, and of course to his very special family, to his wife Tanis and his son Avi and the rest of the entire family, and to all the many who knew him. There's another very, as an aside here to this, that I can appreciate in the fact that there's very few left of those who originally were in the old Lubavitcher Shul on Magnus Avenue, and remember our roots and the origin, and Zivan was one of them that I could share those memories with, and there are not too many left like this. A very interesting thing, Zivan's name in Hebrew is Tzadok Leib ben Mordechai and Zorah. The word Tzadok is obviously from the same root and the same meaning as Tzedek, righteousness, or Tzedek means Yosher, means to do the right thing, and the word Tzedakah. And Zivan, there's an amazing thing that happens. It doesn't happen often to people, but our sages teach us that the tzaddikim, there's righteous people, very special ones, that just like they are tamimim, which means they are wholehearted in the way that they act towards other people, the way they act towards Hashem, towards God, so also Hashem fills the ears tamimim, whole, that they, every year of their life, it's till the very last day. Very few people in history that we think of those like that. One of them is Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. He passed away on the same day, the same Hebrew date as he was born, the 7th of Adar. And for Zivan, it was exactly 70 years ago to the day from the day he passed away in the Hebrew date, which was yesterday's date. That's the 2nd of Teves, when he was born 70 years ago. And it has a lot of meaning, as I'll explain, because the word tamim means someone who's sincere. The word tamim means someone who's wholehearted in what he does. And the one who has his values in the right place. Of course, the greatest and most important was that Zivan, to him, and I had many conversations with him over many, many years, but Tanis, his wife, and Avi, and the family in general were very, very precious to him. Really meant a lot. He also was very important to him, Yiddishkeit, Jewish tradition. It was very important to him to do the right thing in everything. The way he dealt with people, the way he dealt with anything that it had to be done proper and done correctly. And he was also a humble person. He didn't make a fanfare of what he did. He was very generous. He gave tzedakah in a very generous way, but with humility, without any kind of, just quietly. He did what he had to do, and he did it the right way. There are many, many people that came to. There's a long tradition there because his father Max had the insurance, and after that it was Zivan, but people remembered and they felt very comfortable with the way that he dealt with them, and Zivan carried on the tradition even more, and people appreciated that. But to me, one of the most important things was the warmth of his personality. Zivan had that warmth, and he had also that caring and generosity, that's a sign of tmimus, of wholeheartedness. And I think it's also very special that today, the day of the Levaya, the day of the funeral, is the last day of Hanukkah. Today it all comes to the totality of Hanukkah. It's called Zos Hanukkah. This is the day, the 8th day, all the 8 lights come together. And there's a lot of meaning in that, because the lights of Hanukkah, the candle flames, are symbolic of a neshama. Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. A light, a flame, is very important because it sheds light, it gives to others, and it gives warmth, and it's one of the only things that we have that always rises upwards. Everything else pulls down, with gravity goes downwards, but the flame always seeks to go upwards. And at the end, now, as we stand towards the end of last minutes, Zivan's neshama is going upwards and leaves us with very special memories, and more important, with inspiration in our lives about how to live with spreading light, with spreading mitzvahs, and spreading good things. I wanted to stop for a few minutes and leave the next part to Avi, who's going to speak, because Dvarim hayotzim min halev, words that come from the heart, nichnasim lalev, penetrate another's heart, and he'll be able to speak much more deeply than I could possibly speak.
So this eulogy was surprisingly easy for me to write last night, but we'll see how difficult it is to read it. Zivan Saper, dad to me, Zeta to his grandchildren, Ziv or Zivy to my mom or his many friends and family, left us far too soon after a short but brave battle with cancer. But he really did manage to fit so much into his nearly 70 years of life. He was predeceased by his parents, Max and Sork, and his sister, Blummy. He's survived and will be sorely missed by his wife of 44 years, Tanis, his brother, Arthur, and sister-in-law, Marcia, who I know wish very much they could have been here. Myself, my wife, Rochelle, his grandchildren, Hartley and Sari, his brother-in-law Ian, his cousin Audrey and her family, and all his nieces, nephews, cousins, and countless friends from so many different circles in his life. A lot of different adjectives to describe my dad have come up in recent days in my own mind, and in conversations I've had, emails, texts with those who knew him. I think the rabbi already said some of them, but humble, generous, loyal, honest, dependable, wise, fun-loving, devoted, opinionated, a little bit stubborn sometimes. Those are a few of the words that describe my dad. My dad was a North Ender until my mom converted him. He grew up on St. Cross Street and then Gilead Drive in Garden City. I probably don't know as much as I should about his childhood, but I do know his mother's family was in the soft drink bottling business, and he used to drink winola, a cola, which some people may remember, with his breakfast, lunch, and dinner many days. School was not his top priority. He'll be the first to tell you that. But he did eventually graduate from Garden City Collegiate. He told me he preferred to spend his time playing pool or eating at Colecus rather than in the classroom. But I should point out that his maybe what was a lack of motivation should not be mistaken for a lack of intelligence. My dad was sharp. He picked up on things quickly, and I think that's one of the reasons why he was successful at business like he was. After a short stint driving a cab, and I'm not really sure exactly what else he was up to, he went and ended up working for his father, Max, at Saper Agencies as an insurance broker. There were definitely some clashes with the boss, but more than anything, he loved, respected, and I think in a lot of ways idolized his father. He was equally devoted to his mother, Sork, until the day she passed away. After working for Max, he later took over the business and ran it successfully until he sold it in 2016. In total, I think he spent almost 50 years in the business, and he just had so many loyal clients who trusted his advice for decades. He was a people person in business and elsewhere in his life, and I think that was what again, what made him successful. People knew he was honest, they knew he had integrity, that he had their best interests at heart, that he would go to bat for them with an insurance company when they needed him. I know there were times where a client maybe couldn't pay their premium on time, and my dad would, without hesitating, he would front the money to the company and help his client avoid having their policy canceled and figure out how he could help them. As I understand it, this isn't something that any old insurance broker will necessarily do, but that was just the kind of person he was. He also believed in the product he sold. Not everyone loves insurance companies, but whenever someone would say something, he was always, come to the defense and talk about sort of the value that what he was selling was providing for people, and he believed it, and he defended it. He also had a very loyal staff, which I think says a lot about him. He had people who worked for him for many, many years, decades, I would say, and I know even after he left, they were still in touch, and we're still emailing him even as recently as this week. So he touched his customers and his staff. He just worked really hard. He worked evenings, he worked weekends if he had to. If someone had a claim, they would call him any time of the night. And he just did it all because he wanted to give his family a good life, which he did. My mom and I would go to visit his parents in Palm Springs for a couple weeks in the winter, and he would come for maybe half of that or maybe less, just so he could stay close to the office and keep working. Same thing in the summer. We would go to Clear Lake for a few weeks in the summer, and my dad would kind of commute the 3 hours to and from Clear Lake a few times so that he could work. And he did all of that for his family. He loved my mom with all of his heart, and she loved him just as much. His cousin Audrey set them up on a date. They went and saw Bobby Hull play at the old arena, and they were together ever since. They were a team for 44 years of marriage. He went to Israel to propose to her. She was in Israel, and he went and proposed and got her a ring and came back with his future wife. Many of those 44 years, she worked with him at Saper Agencies, and I think it gave him a lot of pleasure to have her as part of the family business, make it a true family business. And he loved her family just as much as his own. When his brother-in-law, my late Uncle Mark, decided to close his own business, my parents didn't blink an eye before they offered my mom's old job to Mark. She went and looked for other work on her own while my dad made sure that my uncle could land on his feet. And that's just one example of the kindness, the selflessness, and just the knack he had for doing the right thing by people. He really wanted nothing more than to give us a happy life, which he did. Even in his final week that he was here, he was more worried about how we were going to do than he was about himself. He was always a calm, steadying force that kind of, I think, balanced off his somewhat less calm wife. My mom would be the one who would do all the work, but my dad got so much joy from big family gatherings at the holidays. It was so important to him to see the whole family together, everyone smiling, catching up, debating politics, whatever. As long as everyone was together, he was very happy. In recent years, I'm so happy they were able to do more traveling, started spending a few months in Arizona in the winters, and we're just so happy that he insisted on doing that, early in his 60s, and before he got too old to enjoy it. It was really important to him. They enjoyed their life together as partners, and they were very fortunate to avoid any serious health problems until that all changed so shockingly a few months ago. The devotion that he had for her went in both directions, and my mom supported him every moment from his diagnosis until the end. As a father, my dad was really as good as it gets. Ever since I became a dad myself, I've tried my best to emulate him, and I know I will continue to do that for many, many years to come. As an adult, he was as much a best friend to me as he was a father. And that's something that his brother Art said to me as well, that he kind of considered him a friend as much as a brother. He was always someone I could go to for advice. Sometimes he would offer unsolicited advice, but it was usually for a good reason, and once in a while, when I actually followed it, I would discover that he knew what he was talking about. He was always supportive of whatever I wanted to do. We'll talk more about curling in a minute, but curling was a huge part of my dad's life. So did it bother him that I wanted to play hockey and never really even gave curling a try? If it did, he never let on. Never did he give me any sense that, he was disappointed that my sport was hockey. Instead, he was really just the ideal hockey dad. I remember he would always watch games. He would always stand by himself watching my games. He would never be with the rest of the parents, like socializing or drinking coffee or whatever. He was always sort of in the corner and watching by himself because he wanted to focus. He was intense. On the ride home after the game, he would talk about the tiniest little details that happened. He wouldn't talk about a goal I scored or something like that. It would be, like that was a neat pass you made to the defenseman behind the net there in the second period, or you picked up the wrong guy back checking on that 3-on-2. He wasn't worried about me getting drafted to the NHL or anything like that. He just loved analyzing all the little details of my games, just as if we were sitting at the old arena together watching the Jets play. And watching sports together was also a big part of our bond. He had tickets to basically everything, and he loved taking me to the games. We went to the Jets, the old Jets, the new Jets, the Bombers, the Goldeyes, Grey Cups. We sat courtside at the Harlem Globetrotters. I remember I got pulled into the show one year, and I think he was more pumped up about that than I was. He still talked about that. We went to the WWF, and I remember getting Bret the Hitman Hart's sunglasses when we sat ringside. I think I was more pumped up about that one than he was. Boxing at the convention center, you name it. We just went to so many things together. And it didn't even matter that most of the teams we watched were pretty bad over those years. It was just something we did together for basically my entire life. One of the things I'll always remember is he really loved yelling at referees and officials. I remember we went to when the Jets had their outdoor game a few years ago at the football stadium. We were at the old timers game. So it was a bunch of 50-year-old former hockey players, and we're sitting in the upper deck of a football stadium, so like 500 feet away from the ice. And he is screaming at the referee because he thinks he missed an offside call from outer space. And, he thought from his vantage point that they missed the call. Didn't matter that it was a shinny game of seniors. He just loved giving it to the Zebras, no matter what. Then there's the Packers. So he became a fan of the Green Bay Packers back in the 60s when it was Vince Lombardi. I became a fan on my own in the 90s when they were a good team, and I liked the small town story. It wasn't because of him. We just both, loved the same football team. But, thank God for that, because for many years we made an annual trip down to Green Bay to see them play. First it was just the two of us, then some of my friends started joining in. And for me, I'll probably look back at all those hours in the car with my dad as fondly as the games themselves. Just driving through North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, talking about whatever. There's the playoff game we went to in January that was, believe it or not, was much colder than we are right now, where he disappeared for the whole third quarter because he was too cold, so he had to go warm up in the bathroom for about an hour. There was a year where our hotel gave away our room, and we were pretty close to sleeping in the car before we found a place somewhere in the same part of the country where we could spend the night. It always seemed like something exciting happened on those trips, and every year when the new schedule came out in April, I just couldn't wait to plan out when we were going to go in September or October for our annual trip. Another thing that we really loved to do together was play golf together. My dad loved golf so much, even though, to be honest, he was not exactly what you would call a natural at the sport. But I think the people that he met there through it were as much of a reason as anything for his love of the game. From John Bloomberg to later Bell Acres, more recently, the last many years at Larders. He always made so many friends through golf at the golf course. I remember my mom, I don't know how old I was, driving me on the highway out to Bell Acres, which was no small thing for her to do. And I would stand on the 18th green and just wait for him to come in with his group. And then him and I would go out there with my little clubs and then play 2 or 3 holes after he was done. I would tee it up for every shot because I couldn't get it in the air if I didn't have a tee. And I just, will never forget him teaching me the game. I remember when we went on a trip to Scotland to play golf, and we entered the daily lottery to get to play at St. Andrews at the old course, one of the most famous courses in the world. And I remember both of our reactions when we found out that we won the lottery and we got a tee time for the next day to play St. Andrews. And what a day that was. I don't think there will ever be a round of golf I'll remember more than playing there with him that day. He was talking about maybe going to Pebble Beach for his 70th birthday, and it's definitely something that we'll be thinking about in February, knowing that we weren't able to make it happen. It didn't really matter what my dad shot on the course one day. He was always planning his next game, and quite often it was going to be the very next day. He loved to tell me about his round, and I mean all about his round. It didn't matter. If he shot 95, I got to hear about at least 50 of those shots in minute detail. Even 3 months ago, a couple weeks before his diagnosis, I was hearing all about some great putt he made for a bogey on one hole or another. Really, he just loved the camaraderie of the club, and wherever you turned, it seemed like somebody was happy to see my dad. His friend Linda called Larders his happy place, and I think that's a great way to describe it. The rabbi already mentioned that my dad's faith was important to him. He was very proud to be Jewish, and it was very important to him that I get a Jewish education. It was so hard to light the candles for this past week and say the Hanukkah blessing, especially the second blessing, She'asa Nisim. Just knowing that it's about miracles, and knowing that he needed a miracle that just wasn't going to happen for him. I remember his father died on Purim, and now he has passed away on Hanukkah, and I think he would be pleased to know that his memory is going to be especially strong with us every year when we light the candles. What do you think about him? I can't believe how much I've written already, and I've tried to be concise without even mentioning all the volunteerism and community service that my dad did. And that starts with curling. Much like his golf game, he wasn't really known for his on-ice prowess as a curler, but he just loved the game in every way. If you watched a game with him on TV and asked him about the strategy that was happening, it was like listening to a chess grandmaster talk about chess. Like he was just lived and breathed the sport. He started at Maple Leaf Curling Club, joined that club's board, and eventually worked his way up through the Manitoba Curling Association and then the Canadian Curling Association. One of my earliest memories from curling was him being the chairman of the MCA Bonspiel back when it was a massive event that took over the entire International Inn and every rink in the town. And I remember when he chaired that. Later on, he went on to be the president of the MCA, and then eventually the president of the CCA in 2001. I remember going to Ottawa the year that he was the CCA president and watching him present the trophy at the Brier to the winning team, whose name I can't remember right now, but I was there to watch my dad give out the trophy. I wonder if Gary Bettman's family goes to the Stanley Cup finals to watch him hand out the Stanley Cup. I don't know. Either way, he was just so proud to be part of like a major Canadian sporting event, and it was just a thrill for us to see his work recognized, albeit indirectly, as wearing his red jacket on the ice. After the CCA, he had one last major curling job to do when he was the president of the 2003 World Championships here in Winnipeg. This was a huge time commitment. It was like a second full-time job for him, but he just loved being able to work on something big for his hometown like that. I think it's a common theme, just like with the golf, but I think the thing my dad loved the most about all of his curling exploits was all of the friends he made, in this case from all across the country, and even throughout the US and Europe. You know, long after he had retired from the curling scene, he would still go to the Brier every year just to reconnect with all of those people. And he's still friends with many of them to this day. And many of them were talking to him right up to this week. He really was a people person. He had so many different circles of friends. He had his friends from the Wellness Institute, where he went to the gym every morning. He had his friends from his Starbucks crew. He had his poker crew. He had his Arizona friends. Many of these overlapped a bit, but just so many different circles that he was a part of. I can't even tell you how many people cared about him just by going to the hospital and looking at his phone and seeing all the emails, text messages, voicemails, missed calls. Like, it was just amazing how many people were part of his life. I'm probably going to miss one or two organizations, but his community service also included the North Winnipeg Rotary Club, where he was the president, the Winnipeg Convention Center, where he spent a year as the president, the Seven Oaks Hospital Foundation, the Jewish National Fund. I told him on Monday night when I spoke to him, our last really good conversation, I said, you didn't waste any time, and it's true. He really didn't waste a single day of those 70 years. He didn't just donate his time, he was also very, very generous with his money. He liked to tell me that it's only really charity if it hurts you to give it. And I think many local organizations really benefited from that attitude. I know one year Revenue Canada was a little suspicious because they didn't think that his donations were legit when they saw what his income was, but that was just my dad. He just loved to give to people. Actually, he loved to pick up a check at dinner time. He loved to treat my friends to a round of golf or tickets to a Jets game. In fact, tonight we're having a dinner that he was excited to treat us to when he ordered it a few weeks ago. You know, he's still treating us to dinner. It's just the way he was. He was just always happiest when he was doing something for someone other than himself. The last few years brought a new type of joy to my dad's life. He loved my wife Rochelle so much. He was just ecstatic when we got married and got engaged. He would always say my kids when he was talking about something. You know, he thought she was a daughter just as much as I was a son to him. It was always my kids. And I'm not sure anything brought him more joy than being a grandfather or a Zeta. We could tell this was going to be the case when we got a dog many years earlier, and he went a little bit crazy with his grand dog. And yeah, it was true. When Hartley and Sari arrived, he just loved them so much, and they loved him right back. When we would come over, my mom would greet them at the front door, and after a few seconds there, it was just a sprint to the family room to go give Zeta a hug, or go find Zeta. My dad had such a good, full life, doing what he loved with the people he loved, but it really breaks our hearts that he didn't get enough time with the two of them. He was so looking forward to Jets games, golfing, bar and bat mitzvahs, or dance recitals, piano recitals, whatever, or even just dropping by to read them a book. But we have so many cherished memories that will be with us, and he'll never be far from our thoughts. We'll always love him, and we'll always miss him.
Thank you, Afi. El molei rachamim, shechein bamreimim, hamtzei menucha nacheno, al kanfei hashchino, b'maleis hakadeshim utahirim, gezer harakiya mazhirim, es nishmas, tzadik leib ben Mordechai v'sariva shalach leilomei, b'avur shiyitnu b'li neder tzedakah v'adas karas nishmasei, v'ganeten tehei menuchosei, l'chein bal harachamim, yaseh v'sei seknofav leilomim, v'yitzrei rachayim es nishmasei, ad nihu nachalosei, v'chvishom al mishkovei, v'neimar amen. On behalf of everyone here, we ask you, Tzaddik, Ben Mordechai, Sarariva, Zivan, that you should pardon us, forgive us if there's anything we did during your lifetime or during the Levaya that was inappropriate. Please forgive us. And now, I'd like to ask whoever can personally participate in the burial, just take each bit of, a few shovelfuls of earth, and then do the best you can, and after that we'll complete the burial, and then after that we'll complete the service at the end of when we fill the grave with one more tefillah. لم نتسي أخلق نكرخ مزمير שימוס כולם הזינו כל יש ויכולת גם בני אדם גם בני איש יחד אושיב ואביין פידה וחוך מייספו גסלי וספונס עתה למשל אוזני אבטח בחינכי דוסי לא מאירו ומאירו אבינקי ואיסו בינו אבק מלכי למה ואושו וסלולו אוך לפדה יפתיש להתחיל כוחי אך אלוהים יפתנשם יד שלקי כחי נסלה אל תירו כי עשיר איש כי יבקרת בעסק לפמסי ככה כלירת אחרוב כבדי כי נפשי וחי יבורך ידוך כיסי טיבלך תורה דרבס ועד נצח לירו אדם יקור וליובין